on with the show, let's break down the AFC West division, Scotty. And this is an interesting division for me, man, because heading into last year, this time last season, with all the moves and all the roster and personnel changes these teams saw, what were we talking about with this division? Possibly the greatest division ever, the toughest division ever. People had the Chiefs coming in third. What's going to happen? And they had a very, very quick, hard fall from grace. Had a very, very hard check back to reality. But within this division, you do have the reigning Super Bowl champions. You have a team that just brought in Sean Payton to go along with Russell Wilson and see if they can revive there. You have a team that got rid of their franchise quarterback and brought in Jimmy Garoppolo. Yep. And you have a team that blew a 28-point halftime lead in the postseason last year. So a lot to dive into, man. But just from the outside looking in, before we get into offense, defense, standings, all of that, what's kind of the biggest? Do you have any storylines you're watching within this division? Obviously, when you look at the Raiders and how abysmal they were last year, you have the Josh Jacobs issues. You got rid of Darren Waller, goes to New York.
Yep.
You bring in Jimmy Garoppolo instead of Derek Carr. You still have the worst head coach in the National Football League. If you go to Kansas City, again, I know they're coming off a Super Bowl victory. Not much different is going on, but Kadarius Toney, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and Sky Moore are your wide receivers. Could be an issue there. Like I said, Sean Payton comes in. Javonte Williams gets healthy for Denver. And then we know all the stories that go along with the Chargers. What are you looking at in the AFC West?
Yeah, I'm looking to see can Jimmy G be better than Derek Carr? And I'm not sure how I feel about that. I view those guys in a similar light almost. Jimmy G, he's more of a guy that is big in big moments in a sense, right? He shows up big in clutch moments from time to time. Derek Carr is kind of the opposite. He's that guy that can fill up the stat sheet, but tends to disappear in the bigger games. So I look at them both in a similar light. You have Derek Carr down in NOLA now, but Jimmy G to Las Vegas. And, we know Jimmy G loves the big lights, the women, the cities. So we'll see how he's able to shine there in Las Vegas. I feel like there's a lot of pressure there, but he reconnects with Josh McDaniels, who you mentioned, the worst head coach in the NFL. But it does rekindle something from his good season that he had in New England nonetheless. But that's one thing I'm paying attention. How much better can Sean Payton make the Denver Broncos? Because obviously when you watch them play last year, mind you, Russell Wilson wasn't the great. He was very bad last year. Let's just be completely honest and transparent. But their head coach, I can't even remember his name at this point. I think it's because I wanted to erase this guy.
Oh, God, yeah. Wait, I'm drawing a blank too.
I cannot remember the guy's name, man. But we talked about him a lot last year and how bad he was.
Yeah. Why am I drawing a blank on this?
So look him up. Yeah, figure that out for me real quick.
Nathaniel. Oh, that's right.
Nathaniel Hackett, right? Yeah, Hackett. He was a hack, man. But nonetheless, I'm interested to see Sean Payton, Hall of Fame head coach, right? Yep. A guy that was able to turn the New Orleans Saints organization around.
Coming out of the broadcast booth this year.
Broadcast booth. He had some strong things to say about Nathaniel Hackett today as well. Basically saying the coaching was simply terrible last year. So if Sean Payton thinks that means he's going to do a lot of things differently, which I think is a good thing for the Denver Broncos. I think it's a good thing for Russell Wilson. So biggest story? I mean, between Jimmy G, Derek Carr switch, and adding Sean Payton to that team now, am I very high on the Denver Broncos? I don't know how to feel about them just yet because I don't know how to feel about Russell Wilson. Yeah. I think they'll be better, though. That's where I would put the Broncos. I think they'll be better. Nonetheless, the Chargers, they're interesting. They just got to get healthy. Guys like J.C. Jackson didn't play really at all last year. That was supposed to be their big signing last year. They bring in Eric Kendricks, who apparently is still a top 100 player in the NFL. Didn't know that, but Harrison Smith was above Devontae Smith in that ranking. So whatever. Nonetheless, they bring him in, top 100 player. They added a rookie in Quentin Johnston, wide receiver. I believe he was from TCU. I don't want to get that wrong, but I believe that's where he was from. First-round pick, so added another weapon there for Justin Herbert. No more excuses. So we'll see. Austin Eckler, is he gonna ultimately hold out? We'll see how far he takes that. But I think the biggest story, man, it's got to be Sean Payton, and just how high we were on the Broncos going into last season, or before last season. Do we give them that same benefit of the doubt now that they've cleared house and brought in what we would like to believe is a good head coach in Sean Payton?
Yeah.
So interesting division. Chiefs lose their wide receiver one again. That's something to talk about. If you want to call Juju the wide receiver one, technically it's Travis Kelce, but nonetheless, they lose Juju Smith-Schuster. They lose McCole Hardman to the Jets. So they have to kind of start over in a sense. Kadarius Toney was really good for them last year, though, but he's starting out the season injured, I believe. So a lot of pressure on Sky Moore, their second-year receiver. We'll see how it goes, but it's Patrick Mahomes. So
yeah. Remember when people had them coming in third place last year?
Yeah, I think, man, I would love to go back. I need to go back and see where I had them. I
don't think you did. I think you had them. I had them second. I had the Chargers winning the division. I think you had the same.
Might have done the same. Yeah, I know I didn't put them in third. I would not put them under the Raiders.
But I think we had 3 of the 4 making the postseason.
Yeah. So I think that's why we had them second, because we didn't think it would matter that much.
Right. With that said, look, we're going to speed this up a little bit because we are 52 minutes in. I don't want to drag this out too long for our viewers. Let's look at the offensive side of things. And real quick, I'll run through my rankings of these 4 teams' offenses, and then I'll throw it to you. At number 4, I do have the Las Vegas Raiders. To me, yes, I know that Russell Wilson had a very, very bad year last year, but to me, they had the worst quarterback in the division. They had the worst offensive-minded head coach within this division. Absolutely. You lose Darren Waller. Yes, I know he's had some health issues. The defending rushing champ, I don't foresee him being the rushing champ again, even if you give him the ball and he shows up for 300 carries this season. So I have the Raiders at 4, even though Devontae Adams is still a top 3 wide receiver in the league. At number 3, I do have the Denver Broncos. Excuse me. I do love the Sean Payton addition. Obviously, being able to work with Drew Brees for all those years definitely helps your resume. But I do think that they have the 3rd best offense in this division simply because of who's ahead of them. I don't think it's anything they could do differently. Javonte Williams comes back healthy. I love that kid. I think he could be a top 10 running back by the end of this year. Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, they have nice weapons, okay? Even if Russ can turn it around. But you're not outdoing what the Chargers have at number 2. Justin Herbert's a gunslinger. They throw the shit out of the ball. We just talked highly about Austin Eckler and his dual threat ability. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Quentin Johnson, like you said, who is in fact out at TCU at number 21 overall. You added there. They're the 2nd best offense in this division because number 1 is one of the greatest quarterbacks and tight ends to ever do it, with one of the best, if not the best, offensive-minded head coach in Andy Reid, along with Eric Bieniemy, the Kansas City Chiefs. It doesn't matter who wide receiver 1, 2, and 3 is for this team. They're going to light up the scoreboard. They're going to be fun. They're going to be exciting. Kelsey's going to go for over 1,000 and probably 10 touchdowns. Mahomes is going to throw 40-plus touchdowns and almost 5,000 yards. It's just the way things are going to go, man, because they're that prolific. So Raiders 4, Broncos 3, Chargers 2, Chiefs 1.
I like it. My list is actually the exact same. So I got the Raiders number 4. Obviously the concerns there, you mentioned some of them, but it's simply, the quarterbacks are established above them. Even Russell Wilson, even as bad as his season was last year, I'm taking him over Jimmy G at the end of the day. So you mix that with Josh McDaniels, Josh Jacobs unhappy. Now, they do still have Devontae Adams, brought in Jacoby Myers, who we mentioned earlier, who obviously had played for Josh McDaniels in previous seasons. So we'll see how that connection works out. Talks of letting Hunter Renfrow go, which I
saw that as well.
I don't know what that's all
about.
Which,
listen, I know the Eagles don't need it and won't do it. But we were just talking about wide receiver 3 with the Birds yesterday. Man, if you go get Hunter Renfrow, Howie.
Yeah, I mean that's your possession guy. He's a top slot receiver in the NFL. So interesting to see those reports, but to me that just speaks to the dysfunction of the Raiders, which is why they're at number 4. Number 3, the Broncos. What, like you said, it's kind of like a process of elimination, right?
Right.
They should be better than what they were last year.
I agree.
Is it going to be better than the Chargers and Justin Herbert, who just got his contract? I don't see it. Adding another receiver there. I expect Herbert to be better. And then, of course, Patrick Mahomes. That's not even a conversation. But the Broncos, they do have weapons, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton. KJ Hamler is the guy that kind of has some untapped potential there. Tim Patrick, Marquez Callaway played real well for the Saints a couple years ago.
Big O was hurt last year a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. So you look at Javonte Williams as well.
I love him, dude.
They brought in Samaj Pirine as well, which is a great backup receiving type of back to partner along with Javonte. And they're saying Javonte should be good to go by preseason, which is insane. These ACL recoveries are crazy, but he's a beast, so I believe it nonetheless. But Broncos at number 3, Chargers at number 2. Like I mentioned, Justin Herbert. It's kind of process of elimination.
In other divisions, right? in a decent amount of other divisions, the Chargers would be the bona fide number 1.
Yeah, exactly. If Patrick Mahomes and the Super Bowl champion Chiefs aren't there, Andy Reid led offense. Now, Chiefs did lose their offensive coordinator. That's something to hint at here with Eric Bieniemy going to DC. But still, Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid.
That's a good pick. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I did forget about it up until just now as I'm talking through it. I don't think that knocks them down.
Doesn't it seem like March was forever ago and April when it comes to like
those a long time.
Initial offseason moves?
Yeah, it's been a long time. I do agree, man. But yeah, it's kind of a process of elimination. It becomes quarterback rankings at a certain point with this division in a sense. Yeah, the Chiefs are my overwhelming favorite on the offensive side of the ball here.
No, I agree with you, man. And we don't even really have to do rankings for the defense. But let me just ask you, who do you think is the best defensive team in this division?
Man, there's a strong argument for the Chiefs just based on culture. I feel like they just breed like good young players. You mix that with Chris Jones, but they had a bunch of guys on their defense last year that were rookies that played really well. Mm-hmm. Nick Bolton, George Karlaftis. I mean, those guys were awesome last year as rookies. So I imagine they did lose an important
piece that went somewhere in the division.
Who are we talking about?
Frank Clark.
He did. Who did he go to? He went to the Chargers or the
Denver.
Oh, he went to the Broncos. I did see his name earlier. I meant to mark him down on my list of changes, but yeah, you're right. Frank Clark. Yeah, you're right. He is left defensive end for the Broncos. So yeah, that is a big piece. Now Charles Omenihu, I think he was the one that got into a little bit of trouble last year, if I'm not mistaken. But he's a top quality defensive end. I guess he's taken his spot.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, that defensive line is pioneered by Chris Jones. So there's an argument there for the Chargers, but I did ultimately go with the team that Frank Clark went to, and I went with the Denver Broncos.
I agree.
Because the pass rush is there, right? Like they have Zach Allen, who's pretty good. He came from the Cardinals, I believe.
Yeah.
Frank
Randy
Clark,
Gregory.
obviously a premier pass rusher. But then you throw in guys like Randy Gregory, right, who can get after the quarterback. They got our guy Alex Singleton there too.
Yep.
Pat Surtain, arguably
their secondary is
the best corner in the NFL, arguably, right? Kawan Williams, he's a backup corner for him.
Yeah.
Kareem Jackson at safety, Justin Simmons at safety.
Yep.
So yeah, they're stacked on defense. I really like what the Broncos have going on. And that's kind of their calling card in a sense. It was definitely their calling card last year.
It is, which is why if the head coach and quarterback play wasn't so poor last year, they arguably could have been a playoff team. I forget the number. I remember later on in the year, you and I discussing this number.
Their record was terrible in games over 21 points.
Dude. If they would have scored 19 or 18 or more points in a handful of different games, they would have been like 10-7 or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
they would have made the postseason.
Absolutely ridiculous that their offense was that poor. We'll see if Sean Payton turns things around. And I guess we'll see right now with our standings how we have this division ranked, man.
Raiders, I did want to say something quick about their defense. So they added our guy Marcus Epps at safety, but they did just add Marcus Peters at corner. That was actually recently.
Oh, yeah.
That kind of slipped my mind for a little bit, but they're interesting. They got a great
pass rush. Their pass rush is very good. Their edge rushers are very good with Max Crosby and Chandler Jones. But outside of that, I just don't think they have enough.
They are
defensive players.
last, just so you know. They're
Right.
last.
Yeah. No, I agree. But I do like their edge rushers over there.
Yeah.
At number 4, they're the last in offense, they're the last in defense, they're the last in this division. That's the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you have the worst head coach in the National Football League. You bring in Jimmy Garoppolo to replace Derek Carr. Listen, I know Derek Carr can have somewhat of a turnover issue and let that thing fly sometimes, but your issue wasn't Derek Carr turning the ball over last year. So you bring in that game manager that you think's going to – you just don't have enough on either side of the ball. You let go of Darren Waller. You might let go of Hunter Renfrow. Josh Jacobs is unhappy and not reporting. Yeah. It's a mess in Vegas. I don't think – I don't know what their over-under is set at, but I don't think Vegas wins more than – they probably won't win more than 6 games, I would imagine.
Yeah.
At number 3, I have the LA Chargers.
Okay.
So to answer your question, I'm going to jump up to number 2. How much does Sean Payton affect winning in Denver? I think pretty drastically. I actually think the Denver Broncos are going to be pretty good this year. I think Sean Payton helps that culture. I think he helps Russell Wilson out tremendously. I don't think Russell Wilson went from a Super Bowl winning Pro Bowl caliber quarterback to just mud. Like I don't think like that drop off last year was so bad. I just think a lot of it had to do with the head coach, the play calling. Yes, he was bad, but I know this is kind of a detriment to his character. I don't think he cared too much last year, dude. After the things started off the way they did, and that's not a good character trait to have as the franchise QB. So that's a different conversation. But I think a lot of that team quit on and around Russell Wilson and the head coach. But I think Sean Payton gets that back on track. They had the best defense in this division. Javonte Williams comes back healthy. I think Russ has a little bit of a resurgence this year. So Chargers 3, because I do think that the Broncos leapfrogged them there. And then the Chiefs won, man. Again, you mentioned the fact that their defense can even be in the conversation for number 1 in this division is pretty crazy. Because on paper, they probably have the 3rd best defense in this division.
Yeah.
But they're better than the Chargers defense in my mind. Like pound in big games and big key moments. Yep. Yeah. I think they're better there. Best head coach, best quarterback, best weapon in terms of Travis Kelce, the culture, the win. It's everything, man. They're going to win 12 plus games. They're going to win this division in my mind.
So I have the Chiefs at number 1 as well, just to give you a precursor there. I'll go in the opposite direction. So I have the Chiefs number 1. I do have the Chargers at number 2, but I gave the Broncos heavy thought there. I do get what you're saying. Because when it comes to coaching, the Broncos do have the better coach when it comes to Sean Payton versus Brandon Staley there.
And the better quarterback.
Now, the thing is, Brandon Staley's job is on the line this season. So if the Chargers come in 3rd in this division, that's it for him, right? He's gone. Like, he has to be gone, at the end of the day. Now, when I say I have Chiefs, Chargers, Broncos in order like that, 1 through 3, when I say that, I think all 3 of those teams are going to have winning records. So I think all of them are going to be above 500. Whether that means they make the playoffs or not, I don't know if that's the case.
Right.
But I do think each are good enough to get to 9 wins. Chargers, I'm just going with the stability, right? It's not a first-year head coach in Sean Payton. Now, it is Sean Payton at the end of the day, but it's still not a first-year head coach. I look for Justin Herbert to come back a little revamped. Think he's getting a lot of shade thrown his way this offseason, and to be fair, it's rightfully so, right? He's showed up small in the big moments, and anytime that happens, you're going to get called out for it. He's one of the top talented quarterbacks in the NFL. There's no denying that. You add another weapon to the offense, maybe keeping Keenan Allen healthy for most of the season, his number 1 option, will help him out a lot more throughout the season as well. And hopefully they can satisfy Austin Eckler. That's one of the bigger things of their offseason right now, is making sure he comes to practice and he comes to play in these games, because he's a huge piece of their offense. But I am going with the Chargers over the Broncos. And a part of that is my perception of Justin Herbert over Russell Wilson as well. I think that is part of the key there for me as well. But to your point, I thought heavily about moving the Broncos ahead of the Chargers because I do like their defense more. It's arguable who has the better weapons on offense, I would say. Just because I do think the Broncos receivers, I think they're a little underrated just based off of
I
last
agree.
season and that offense and that coach. And that could be said about Russell Wilson as well, to be fair. To your point about the Chiefs, I just don't see them sliding. I do want to ask you a question about them. Once again, Raiders at 4, they're just dysfunctional, and it didn't change with their new head coach, and that's a problem, man. Maybe it goes up to the ownership. I don't know what's going on there in Las Vegas. I thought that they would get
You blew a
like
21-point lead.
in Las
You blew
Vegas.
a 21-point lead to the Arizona Cardinals last year.
Yeah, like come on, that's the low of the low, man. Like, come on. There's a point in the season where they were inspired by Jared Stidham. You know what I mean? Like that's what they're going through.
Yep.
So yeah, the Raiders are in turmoil, and I don't see that getting too much better this year. Maybe they can just stabilize some things. Maybe build a culture this year. Play teams tough. Be competitive in every game. That would be a good year for the Raiders. But the Chiefs, right? We agree. I don't see them taking a downhill fall. Is there any chance of a Super Bowl hangover? Are they threatened by a Super Bowl hangover at all, or are they just immune to that?
They're immune to it because they're a dynasty. They're all. I mean, what they've won 2. So they've been to 4 straight AFC championships.
Yeah.
Would have been 4 straight Super Bowls outside the second half against Joe Burrow and the Bengals 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So 4 straight AFC championships. 3 out of the 4 years went to the Super Bowl, and 1, 2 of 3 to them only lost to the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
The head coach is immune to it. This young quarterback is immune to it. There's no.
I had to ask.
No,
yeah,
I feel
agree,
you.
man.
I
agree. They're just too good.
But to me, Super Bowl hangovers occur for the one-offs, right?
Yeah.
Like when the Rams won it, you get a Super Bowl hangover.
Yeah.
When teams get there, sometimes you get when you're a dynasty, like so when Brady was in New England all those years.
Yeah.
You weren't getting a Super Bowl hangover. They might not get back.
Yeah.
But that's not because of a hangover. That's because they lose in the AFC championship or something to Peyton Manning or something like that. So to me, the Chiefs aren't guaranteed to get back. They're not the best football team, but I promise you they're at least getting to the divisional round.
Yeah.
And I'd bet a lot of money they're playing in the AFC championship game again.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, I just had to ask. I had to ask to be fair to the rest of the Super Bowl winners. But
see, that's where as Eagles fans, we're trying to be immune to a Super Bowl hangover soon.
Yeah.
We're trying to get back to the mountaintop this year. And then we're trying to build into what this was, right? So we'll see.